Hey guys, Logan here with Logan Built, back in the build room tonight to talk a little bit more on where and how to spend your money the best way you can this upcoming tax season. I started the last video off talking about input shafts, so we're going to continue on from the front of the transmission, working our way back, and talk about torque converters. Torque converters is a large topic. I have done some more in-depth videos in the past about that, but I feel like we need a refresher on it, and I'm going to go into some of the things specifically that you need to know when choosing a converter, which brand, stall speeds, all of the important stuff. But to start with, let's talk about the range of powers that torque converters can handle and how to choose the converter best based on your application. Now, I'm specifically going to speak on the gear-in converters in this video. Those are the only converters that I sell. They're the only converters that I run. But in this segment of it, I believe that this information correlates to all of the different builds and applications that are out there. So you're going to see a single disc converter as your cheapest entry-level option, pretty much no matter what brand that you're looking at. And a single disc converter is great in the right application. So if you have a stock truck or a truck with just a tune on it, something smaller power level that you're not going to tow over 7,000 to 8,000 pounds on a regular basis with, a single disc converter is a great option. If you're going to make above 500 horsepower and you're going to tow above 10,000 pounds, that's where you need to step up and go directly to the triple disc. Now, I know that there's some dual disc stuff that's out there on the market, but when it comes to 47, 48 stuff, it's either single disc or straight to the triple disc. The triple disc, a gear-in triple disc at least, is good from, say, 500 plus horsepower all the way to 1,000 horsepower with their regular non-extreme duty converter. Now, above 1,000 horsepower, that's when we go to an extreme duty converter. This is going to be when we get into the Sonex 35 spline input setups, any of the larger shaft stuff. You're going to be pushing above 1,000 horsepower, so we go directly into the extreme duty lockup clutch. Now, this is still a triple disc converter, but it has a thicker intermediate plate between the clutches. So imagine a steel in the transmission. The extreme duty has a much thicker steel. The job of the steel is to dissipate the heat from the lockup clutches. So the thicker you go in a steel, it's just like a reaction plate in a transmission. The thicker you go, the more heat it'll dissipate, the longer it'll live, the more power it'll hold. Now, there are some converter companies out there that claim to have a 4-disc converter. And the reality of that is that that is not exactly true. Although, yes, there are 4 sides of a clutch inside the converter, one of the sides of the clutches is not splined to anything. So therefore, it's just along for the ride. It's not actually giving you any more holding power. So at this current time, the best holding power converter that you can buy is a gear-in triple disc extreme duty converter. So now that we've kind of gone over the power levels with these and when you should choose what converter to choose, let's dive into this gear-in converter that I have here on the table, and let's talk about some of the physical features. So if you have a converter in your truck already and you want to figure out if it is a gear-in converter or not, this is actually really easy to do. You can spin the engine over or you can bar it over and look for this drain plug. If it does not have a drain plug, pretty good sign that it's not a gear-in converter, because gear-in builds all of their converters with a drain plug. It's a really nice feature. When you're servicing your transmission, you're able to drain the fluid that's out of the converter. It makes it nice for if you need to send the converter in for a stall change, you can get all the fluid out of it. In my opinion, every converter should be built with a drain plug. And then the next thing that you'll find, if it is a gear-in converter, is there will be a stamping mark next to it. In this case, it reads 17 minus 150. That is referring to the stator that is in the converter. And then this one says SXD, which stands for Sonex Extreme Duty. So we know that this converter is built with a 17 minus 150 stator, and it's built for a Sonex Extreme Duty 35 spline input shaft. You also notice that all of the gear-in converters are black with a billet cover. When these things get welded, they have a really nice weld table. They have a really nice balancing machine, and they air test all of their converters underwater to make sure that you don't have any leaks in the converter whatsoever. So this not only helps them keep warranty work down, but it also ensures that you're getting a better product, and you know that when you get a gearing converter, you can put it in and you're not going to have any issues with it. So looking at the billet cover on the converter here, all of the gearing single and triple disc converters, so anything non-extreme duty converter, is going to have equidistant bolts all the way around. That's the easiest way to identify if it's an extreme duty or not when it comes to the triple disc converter. On an extreme duty converter, this cover is designed a little bit differently. It's a little bit thicker to give it some added material, and then they actually moved the converter bolt holes closer together. So you'll have two here, two here, two here, and so forth. And this allows you to run 12 converter bolts with their flex plate. The reason that they're moved closer together there is they believe that it gives you a little bit more clamping load if you choose to run 12 bolts. I personally rarely run 12 bolts on anything. This converter here is actually the converter out of JP's truck when we went 497, and you can see by the red Loctite here that we were only running 6 converter bolts in it. So usually when you pair a gearing converter with a gearing billet flex plate and you red Loctite these and you torque them properly, you don't ever have any issues of converter bolts backing out. So really the things that you can't see in a torque converter are the big difference makers, and these are really the things that make the gearing converter the best on the market in my opinion. One of the biggest things right off the bat is when you pick one of these converters up, you're going to feel that they're physically heavier than some of the competitive converters that are out there. That is because these converters still run a dampening plate. And what the dampening plate does is, imagine it's basically a spring cushion between your lockup clutches and your input shaft. Now we know that lockup clutches are just like a manual clutch in a manual car or truck. When you engage the clutches, it's just like letting off of the clutch pedal in your manual. The clutches lock up, and now there's a physical link between your crankshaft and your input shaft. This is what gives you that added power feeling, and this is what makes trucks tow better and they run cooler because you're not relying on fluid coupling at that point. But when you lock up, it is a shock load to your input shaft. So the factory puts a dampening plate in there, and the springs in the dampener are meant to share the load from the lockup clutches being applied, so that way the input shaft doesn't see all that force. If your converter does not have a dampening plate, it is tremendously harder on the input shaft when it locks up. Now, some companies believe that by removing the dampener, that it makes their converter lock up harder. And so they think that it's easier on the lockup clutches. The reality of this is, it's not true. You physically can't make the lockup clutches apply any quicker, any harder, any more holding power by just eliminating the dampener. All you're doing is putting more load, more stress on the input shaft, and there's no reason for it. So I steer clear of any converter right off the rip that isn't going to run a dampener in it. And the next thing is stall speed. This is where the witchcraft and the magic commonly associated with torque converters gets brought in. There's a lot to break down when it comes to exactly how a stall speed works and exactly what a stall speed is. And for this video, so that way we don't get it too long-winded, I've done a full video on stall speeds before. We're just going to talk a little bit about stall numbers versus stator designs. Right off the bat, if you call me or you call Gearin or you go on Gearin's website and you talk to them about a torque converter, you're not going to find any sort of stall numbers. You're not going to see 2400 stall, 2000 stall, etc. As to where if you go to most of the competing companies that are out there, you're going to find all of their converters listed off as stall speeds. And the reality of it is that this is a lazy way to attack a converter when you're trying to choose exactly what's right for your application. Every converter is going to stall differently based on the truck that it's in, the weight of the truck, the gear ratios of the truck, the way that the engine makes torque. There are so many factors that go into what actually changes the stall speed on a torque converter. We could take the exact same converter with the exact same stator and pump design in it. We could put it in 3 different trucks, ranging from a totally bone stock truck to a 1,000 horsepower street truck to a full-blown race truck, and that converter is going to have a different stall speed in every single truck. It's going to be different. When we're talking stall speed, there's lots of different factors to stall speed. There's true engine stall speed, there's flash speed, there's a lot that goes into this. So by putting a blanketed 2400 stall on there really is a lazy way of looking at it, in my opinion. So what Gearin does is we talk in stator designs, 17 minus 150, DA, DZ, 18SS. We're going to throw out these numbers that don't make any sense to you. And basically what these are identifiers of the stator design. So the 17 minus 150, it's a 17 blade stator with 150 thousandths machined off of it. That is going to increase the stall speed. 18SS, similar to 17 minus 150, but it is an 18 blade stator. The DA and the DZ, now we're getting into actually changing the pump side of the converter. We're running Allison pumps with billet stators. So this is where you have to lean on the transmission professional to choose the correct stator for your truck. So let's say you have a truck that is a 5.9 common rail and you're wanting to run an S472 on it. You want to make somewhere around 700 or 800 horsepower. Well, if you call XYZ company, they might tell you 2400 stall, 2600 stall. They're going to throw those numbers out there. They're probably not going to ask you what gears are in the truck. They're probably not going to ask you how heavy the truck is. They're just going to go off of whatever stator that they believe stalls at that speed. As to where if you call me, I'm going to take the time to ask you all the questions about your setup. I'm going to explain to you how each different stator acts, and then I'm going to help you make the choice to properly choose the right stator for your application. So when you call in and you don't get a 2000 stall speed or 2200 stall speed number, just be patient, listen to what we have to say. Take all the information that we give you, and we'll help you get the exact right converter for your application. And then on the triple disc stuff, if you decide that, hey, you know what, I think I need a little bit tighter stator, or I want to loosen this thing up a little bit, you get 1 free restall within the first year. So between the knowledge that I have to lean on and the free restall, I have no doubt that we can nail exactly the converter that you need. And then the last major difference inside the converter that you cannot see is specific to the higher stall stuff. So Gearin actually has a patent design, so I won't go into exactly how the design works for their sake, but you'll see with some of these competing converters out there that when they go to a higher stall converter, they start having lockup clutch issues. And the higher stall they go, the faster they kill lockup clutches. You guys can do a little bit of digging and you'll probably be able to find somebody that has had a high stall converter that's not a Gearin converter, and in 2 or 3 spool ups that thing had burnt the lockup clutches in it. That's because when the converter is spinning, the higher the stall speed, the more pressure that you're building inside the converter, the fluid gets past the turbine and it starts to apply the lockup clutches. There's really not a whole lot you can do about that unless you keep the fluid away from the lockup apply piston. So Gearin has a patent design that protects against that. So we can run whatever stall speed that we need to run for your bigger turbo, higher horsepower application. And as long as it's paired with the right input shaft and everything else in the transmission is built correctly, you will never have any lockup clutch dragging during spool up. So that's a good little rundown on why I only use Gearin converters and which Gearin converter is going to be best for your application. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to nail down everybody's converter in a short video like this. So if you guys are interested in talking about a converter, I do sell the gear and converters. They're not on my website because there's lots of different options. I prefer people to call me directly and discuss that. If you're not a phone call type of person, you can shoot me an email to info@getloganbuilt.com, or you could actually text me directly at 859-466-7737. But get with me. I'll be glad to talk to you guys about a torque converter, help you choose exactly what you need for your application, so that way this tax season, you guys don't waste your money. That's all I got for this one. Thanks for watching. If you're new here, click the subscribe button. If you like this content, hit the like button. Helps us get it out there to more people. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.